Is the DBV-152 just a better Grille 15? Well, according to many people, especially when the tank was just coming out, yes. But after I've been playing it for a while now, I might have to disagree. Let's start out with the gun, and instead of going through all the deep dive of the stats and the dispersion values and the bloom, here they are on the screen now. If you want to look at them, there they are. Instead, what I'm going to talk to you about is how the tank actually feels to play with, which is that the gun feels exactly the same as a Grille 15, but you have higher alpha, but longer reload. It still has the ability to miss spectacularly when you are point blank in front of someone, exactly the same as a Grille 15. And if I was in a completely blind test, and there was no indication to tell me which tank I was looking at in sniper mode, and they fired shot after shot after shot, I probably wouldn't be able to tell you the difference. If you have played the Grille 15, you know exactly how this gun will play, because it is pretty much exactly the same. It has a very, very short aim time and lots of bloom. The two things that the Grille 15 is very well known for. And obviously, it being a tank destroyer, you cannot mount vertical stabilizer, so to get that bloom down, there isn't really an easy way of doing it. And before everybody rushes into the comments and says, just use improved rotation mechanism, it doesn't work the way you think, probably. But if you want more information, I'll leave a link in the description where I go through all the gun handling equipments, so then you are well informed that IRM is not a mini V-stab. We're now going to speak about the platform, and the platform is arguably the most important factor when it comes to how the vehicle feels to play. And for the DBV, this is where it becomes interesting. You see, it has a fully traversal turret, and that allows a different style of play to what the Grille can offer. But you'll notice that I never said that it was better than the Grille 15 because of this. Many people have brought this up and said that because it has a fully traversal turret, it's better than the Grille 15. But that's not really the way I see it. It's not making it better, it's just playing it slightly differently. When I go and play the Grille, I know for a fact that I don't have a fully traversal turret, so I'm not going to even bother trying to get into a situation where I would need one. I go into position, I then shoot from that position, and I would have 99% of the shots that the DBV would have. The only difference is that I'm in a slightly different position. Now yes, obviously going around a corner with your turret in reverse and only showing a small amount of your tank is more beneficial. And also when a little French bastard tries to YOLO you at the end game or the start of the game, then yes, the DBV is a little bit better in that scenario. But in the vast majority of situations, I don't feel at a disadvantage or an advantage playing either of them. All I do is just play slightly differently. The rest of the platform is fine. You have -7 degrees of gun depression, the exact same as the Grille 15. However, you are lower profile, so when looking over the front of the vehicle, especially on a ridgeline and stuff, you may run into a few issues. We now move on to the stage where the Grille doesn't stand a chance, and that is in the camouflage. You see, the Grille 15, I don't know why it still has this camouflage rating, but it does, and that is 7.87% base camo. For context, a Rinoceronte has 7.18% base camo when stationary. Yes, the Grille 15 has similar camo rating to a Rinoceronte, which is a heavy tank. The DBV, on the other hand, has 18.52%. Over double. Nearly 2.5 times, actually, the Grille 15's camo. So yeah, there's really no argument anyone can make to say that the Grille is better in this regard, because it just isn't. And this is one of the reasons why people say that the DBV is better than the Grille. And yeah, I agree, because the camo rating is quite important for these style of tanks. Sniper role where you need the camo, you want to be hiding behind a few bushes, and the extra camo really does help out. And I've got nothing here because the Grille just loses. Now, mobility for these style of tanks is also quite important. And for some of you, it's rated higher or lower depending on your playstyle. And you may think to yourself, well, if there's a sniper TD, you don't really need to move around much. But for this style of tank, you really do. The Grille and the DBV both have the ability to get around the map and into different locations to then have better shots at people. And it's quite important to move around the map, especially with so many turbo games going on. in nowadays world of tanks as well. If you're in a turbo win, you're constantly chasing damage, and mobility is a massive important factor regarding that. The Grille 15 goes at 60 km an hour across all terrain types once you do have the first field mod and off-road driving with Brothers in Arms. In the DBV with the same setup, you're going 52. The power to weight is also less than the Grille 15, although you really are starting to like split hairs because it's less than 1 horsepower per ton. Reverse speed wise, it is better again in the Grille 15, but only by 1 km an hour. But to be completely honest with you, I can have both sides of the argument here, because 52 is already extremely fast and you'll be able to get across the map in no time at all. But when you whack a turbo on both of these is where it becomes kind of obscene. Because what then happens is that the Grille then goes at 65 across all terrain types and the DBV goes at 57, and I know which tank I would rather be in if I'm chasing damage in the endgame. We now move on to the armor and health. And the DBV just wins this one outright, because the Grille 15 doesn't have any armor. It does have 50 more health, but it doesn't mean much when you get HE'd by literally everything. Now that's not to say that the DBV is well armored, because it's not, but if we're talking about HE ability, the DBV is substantially more resilient to HE than the Grille 15. Unless that is that you show your side or rear in the DBV, in which case you are getting HE'd completely, because there is no armor there at all. And then the final category, which is view range. This is where the Grille just wins outright, because it has 20 more meters view range than the DBV. You have 370 view range on the DBV versus the 390 on the Grille 15, which means that the Grille never has to use coated optics if it's using food to get up to that 445 meters view range. And even if you were to use the field mod on the DBV, you would still only go up to around about 440 meters view range with bounty vents as well. So if we're going to be looking at this as objectively for the stats wise as possible, which tank actually comes out on top? Well, if we look at the guns, then they are both equal, because depending on who you are as a player, you'll either prefer the DBV or the Grille. Do you want to have more alpha but a longer reload? DBV. Do you want to have less alpha but a shorter reload and more DPM overall as well? Then it's the Grille. And remember, this is only 50 alpha that you're shaving off for quite a bit less of a reload time. So for the guns, which also includes the gun handling, they're both equal. It doesn't matter which one you choose, it just depends on the playstyle. Mobility, the Grille wins just outright. It is faster, it has more horsepower per ton, and it is quicker to get around and find the damage in the endgame as well. So mobility wise, that is a win for the Grille. For the armor, DBV wins because it doesn't get HE'd as often as the Grille does. For camo rating, the DBV wins. Again, this is just not even a contest compared to the Grille 15. You have 7.87 versus 18.52. So yes, that is a point in favour of the DBV, and that is now 1 up on the Grille. And then we move on to the final section, which is then the view range, and the Grille just wins that outright again. So it becomes 3-3 and everything's equal. So at the end of the day, one is not better than the other, and it's all just down to your personal playstyle. I've just sat here for 4 hours to tell you that they're the same tank pretty much. What am I doing?